I walked into the main conference room, whistling a little tune. It was a Monday morning, sunny outside, and I felt great. Our latest product launch had been a massive success. Sales were up, morale was high, or so I thought. I was Alex, the founder and CEO of Apex Innovations, a tech company that had grown from my garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in just 10 years. I built this place from nothing. Every brick, every server, every single employee, I brought them here. So when I saw them all sitting there, solemn faces, not a single one smiling, I knew something was up. My executive team, my department heads, even a few junior employees, I rarely saw in these big meetings. They were all there. Mook, my COO, a man usually as jovial as a Santa Claus, was gripping his hand so hard his knuckles were white. Sarah, my head of marketing, usually bubbling with ideas, looked like she was about to cry. "All right, everyone, what's going on?" I asked, my voice still light. "Did someone spill coffee on the new server rack? Or did we finally convince the board to let me buy that company jet?" I chuckled. Nobody laughed, not even a polite snort. The silence was heavy, like a wet blanket thrown over the room. Mark cleared his throat. He avoided my gaze, looking at a spot on the wall behind me. "Alex," he began, his voice surprisingly shaky. We need to talk." "I am here. Talk away," I said, leaning back in my chair. I glanced around the room. Their eyes were on me. Not with admiration, not with excitement, but with something I couldn't quite place. Pity, maybe. Concern. It was unsettling. Sarah spoke up next, her voice barely a whisper. "This is hard, Alex. What's hard?" I asked, a flicker of irritation starting to spark within me. "Spit it out. We have a company to run." Mark finally met my eyes, and his were full of a deep sadness. "Alex, this is an intervention." My brain stopped for a second. An intervention? For what? Was I drinking too much? Diet Coke? Was I working too much? Did they think I needed a vacation? I was so confused. My mind raced through all the possibilities, dismissing each one as ridiculous. "An intervention for what, Mark?" I asked, my tone now sharper. "Are you all playing some kind of elaborate prank? Because if so, it's not funny." He shook his head slowly. "It's about your spending, Alex. Your reckless, uncontrolled spending." I stared at him, then at Sarah, then at the rest of the silent faces around the table. They were serious. They actually believed this. My spending? I, Alex Thorne, the man who built this empire from nothing, who obsessed over balance sheets, who personally approved every major purchase, had a spending problem. This was beyond absurd. This was an insult. "My spending," I repeated, my voice rising. "Are you out of your minds? I own this company. Every penny that goes in or out, I am the one who signs off on it. What spending are you talking about?" Sarah took a deep breath. "The gold-plated stapler for your office, Alex. The vintage arcade machine in the break room. The 5-figure sum for that corporate wellness guru who just told us to meditate more. The new art collection in the lobby. The private chef for employee lunches last week. The list goes on." I blinked. They were serious. They actually thought these things were a problem. The stapler was a gag gift from a supplier, a joke I'd kept. The arcade machine was a perk for the team, something I thought would boost morale. The wellness guru was an experiment, a tax write-off. The art was an investment, a way to make our space more inspiring. The chef was a one-time treat to celebrate the product launch. These were not reckless spending. These were minor expenses, perks, or strategic investments for a company of our size and success. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice dangerously low now. "You think these small things are a spending problem? Apex Innovations is a multi-million-dollar company. We just had our best quarter ever. We have more money in the bank than ever before." "What exactly do you think is going on here?" Mark leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Alex, we're worried about you, and we're worried about the company. These small things add up, and it's not just the things, it's the impulsive decisions, the lack of consultation. We've seen your personal spending too, the new sports car, the trips, the watches." My personal spending. Now they were crossing a line. My personal finances were none of their business. I earned every single penny. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week for years to get to where I was. I had a right to enjoy the fruits of my labor. "My personal spending is irrelevant," I snapped. "And the company's finances are stronger than ever. What's the real issue here?" Because this spending problem accusation is completely fabricated. Sarah looked at Mark, then back at me. "We have numbers, Alex. Projections. The growth is slowing down. Our cash reserves are depleting faster than they should be. And frankly, your recent decisions have been erratic. We believe you might be experiencing some kind of crisis, and it's affecting your judgment." "Crisis? Me? I was at the peak of my career. This was an insult of epic proportions." I felt a cold anger spread through me. People I had trusted, the people I had built this company with, were sitting here accusing me of being irresponsible, even mentally unstable. This was a direct attack on my competence, my sanity, my very leadership. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back with a scrape that echoed in the silent room. "So, you, my employees, think you know better than me the person who built this company from nothing?" I looked around at their faces, searching for any sign of doubt, any flicker of understanding. There was none. Only concern, fear, and a strange conviction. "You think I am the problem?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of my disbelief and growing hurt. "You think my spending is going to bring down this company?" Mark looked down at his hands. "We just want to help, Alex, before it's too late." Before it's too late? Before it's too late? Before it's too late. What did they know that I didn't? My mind reeled. This was not a prank. This was deadly serious. And it was hitting me harder than any business failure ever could. The betrayal in the room was palpable. My own people thought I was losing it. The man who owned the company was being accused by his employees of ruining it. The irony was suffocating. And the worst part, tiny, unsettling voice in the back of my head wondered, just for a second, if they might be right. But I quickly pushed it down. Number impossible. This was a mistake. A massive, humiliating mistake. The air in the conference room was thick with unspoken accusations. I stood there, reeling, trying to process what I had just heard. My employees, the people I trusted, thought I was destroying the company with my spending. Me, Alex Thorne, the one who lived and breathed Apex Innovations. Mark, ever the professional, opened a sleek tab. "We've compiled a presentation, Alex," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "We want you to see what we're seeing." Projector flickered to life, casting a stark white light on the wall. The first slide was titled Apex Innovations, Financial Review and Spending Trends. Underneath it, in smaller font for Alex Thorne, it felt like a corporate intervention, complete with a PowerPoint. "Over the past 6 months," Mark began, his voice gaining a more businesslike tone, We've observed a significant increase in what we're classifying as non-essential expenditures. He clicked to the next slide. It showed a graph, a red line spiking upwards. Here you can see the trend of miscellaneous spending. It's almost doubled in the last quarter alone. I squinted at the graph. It looked alarming at first glance, but I knew what those spikes represented. A new software license that saved us countless hours. A specialized piece of equipment for R&D. A particularly expensive but highly effective marketing campaign. These weren't miscellaneous. These were investments. Mark, what exactly are you lumping into miscellaneous? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Well, he said, clicking to another slide which showed a list. The personalized, ergonomically designed chairs for the entire sales team. The high-end coffee machines on every floor. The weekly fresh flower deliveries to the lobby. The new Zen garden in the break room. Complete with a miniature waterfall. The exorbitant budget for the company's 10-year anniversary party, which, by the way, is still 6 months away. I stared at the list. Each item on its own seemed trivial. The chairs were about employee comfort and productivity. The coffee machines were a perk. The flowers brightened the office. The Zen garden was a stress reducer. The anniversary party was a celebration of a decade of hard work. A way to show appreciation to everyone who built this place. I remembered discussing each of these things, weighing the pros and cons, and deciding they were worthwhile. These are investments in employee well-being and company culture, Mark, I argued. They boost morale, which leads to higher productivity. It's not reckless spending, it's strategic. Sarah spoke up, her voice firm. But at what cost, Alex? We've seen the budget for the anniversary party balloon from a reasonable amount to something that could fund a small startup. And the Zen garden? It cost more than our new intern's annual salary. My face flushed. That wasn't entirely true. The Zen garden was an office improvement, a capital expenditure. And the anniversary party, I had just approved a slightly larger budget to make it truly spectacular, a memorable event for everyone. It was supposed to be a gift. Mark clicked again. Then here is the personal expenditures that seem to bleed into company accounts. The new custom-built desk in your office, for example, which was billed as executive furniture upgrade, but cost more than some people's cars. The research trips to exotic locations, which coincided with your personal vacations. The company credit card charges for designer clothes and high-end restaurants, often with no clear business purpose. My jaw tightened. They were digging into everything. The desk was an ergonomic necessity for my back, which had been bothering me for months from long hours at a cheap desk. The research trips were indeed combined with vacations, but I always met with local businesses and scouted new markets. And the credit card charges? I used my company card for business meals, and yes, sometimes for personal expenses when I was traveling. But I always reimbursed the company. Always. They must have overlooked the reimbursements. I always reimbursed the company for personal use of the corporate card, I stated, my voice sharp. And my research trips are legitimate business expenses, combined with personal time to maximize efficiency. A younger employee, David, who was our lead developer, spoke for the first time. His voice was timid, but his words hit hard. We've also noticed a lot of investments in unusual ventures, Alex. That obscure cryptocurrency startup you put $1 million into. The bioluminescent algae farm you wanted to fund. The personalized scent diffuser for the office that cost tens of thousands. My blood ran cold. Cryptocurrency venture was a speculative, high risk, high reward investment that I believed had potential. The algae farm was a passion project, something I was considering funding personally, not with company money, though I had discussed it excitedly with Dave. The scent diffuser was a test run for a potential new product line. They were twisting everything. Crypto investment was a small percentage of our portfolio, David, I explained, trying to stay calm. It's a calculated risk for potential high returns, and the algae farm was a personal interest, not a company investment. The scent diffuser was a product development experiment, a pilot for future innovations. Mark sighed. Alex, we understand you are a visionary. That's why we're all here. But sometimes, vision can turn into obsession. We've seen your focus shift. You are less engaged in day-to-day operations, more interested in these side projects and lavish spending. Sarah nodded. We're not trying to accuse you of malice, Alex. We think you are just losing touch. The company's financials aren't as robust as they appear. Our profit margins are shrinking. Our competitive edge is eroding. We're bleeding money not on core operations but on these luxuries. I felt a wave of nausea. Shrinking profit margins?
Eroding competitive edge? Bleeding money?
This was news to me. My quarterly reports had shown steady growth, healthy profit. Was I missing something? Was I truly that out of touch? Number. It couldn't be. I reviewed those reports personally. You are misinterpreting the data, I insisted, my voice tight with frustration. Our financials are sound. We're diversified. We're growing. Mark clicked to the final slide. It showed a projected balance sheet. The numbers were grim. Cash reserves projected to hit critical levels within 12 to 18 months, if current trends continued. A line graph showed revenue flattening, while expenses continued to climb. This is a fabricated scenario, I said, my voice barely a whisper. This isn't real. My reports show something completely different. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of a painful sincerity. These are the true numbers, Alex, audited by an independent firm we secretly hired. We couldn't trust the internal reports anymore. The betrayal was complete. They had gone behind my back, hired an external auditor, and compiled this damning evidence. They truly believed I was a danger to my own company. The hurt was physical, a sharp pain in my chest. These were my people. My company. And they thought I was ruining it. It was a complete agonizing breakdown of trust. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I just stood there staring at the grim projections, feeling utterly alone in the room I had built. I stormed out of the conference room, leaving them all sitting there, mouths agape. My mind was a whirlwind of rage and hurt. My own employees, who I had paid, nurtured, and promoted, had staged a hostile takeover attempt disguised as an intervention. And they had dared to involve my family, my sister Clara, my parents. What had they told them? How much damage had they done? I locked myself in my office, the familiar hum of the servers from the next room now sounding like a mocking laugh. I paced, my heart pounding, my hands balled into fists. I wanted to fire them all, every single one. But then what? The company would collapse. They knew it. They had cornered me. After an hour of pacing, the initial hot anger began to cool, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. What if? What if there was a shred of truth in what they were saying? Not about my spending problem in the way they presented it, but about something deeper. My company credit card. I was meticulous about reimbursements. I always checked my statements. Always. That luxury watch charge. It simply wasn't true, was it? I pulled out my phone and accessed my banking app, then the company's expense management portal. I scrolled through the corporate card transactions. My eyes scanned the dates, the vendors, the amounts. I found the entry mark had mentioned. Charge from Elite timepieces for $10,200 3 weeks ago, and there was no corresponding reimbursement. My blood ran cold. This wasn't possible. I hadn't bought a watch. Then I remembered 3 weeks ago, I had been at a major industry conference out of state. I had given my card to Sarah, my head of marketing, to pay for a large team dinner she was organizing for our clients. It was a big networking event, and I trusted her with the payment. Had she charged something else? It didn't make sense. She was meticulous, almost as much as me, but the evidence was there. $10,000 personal charge, unexplained, unreimbursed, on my company card. It directly contradicted my defense. This was exactly the kind of thing they had accused me of, and the financials. The audited reports Mark had shown, the flattening revenue, the rising costs, the dwindling cash reserves. I had glanced at them, dismissed them as fabricated. But what if they weren't? What if my internal finance team was giving me different numbers, hiding the truth, or was simply incompetent? I called my CFO David, a different David than the lead developer, but he didn't pick up. I left a message demanding an immediate meeting. He had just been on vacation. Maybe things had changed while he was away. No, that was a weak excuse. I should have known. I pulled up the latest internal financial reports myself, the ones I normally just skimmed after David's summary. I started digging deeper, looking at the raw data, cross-referencing sales figures with marketing spend, analyzing operational expenses with a critical eye, and as I did, a knot tightened in my stomach. The numbers didn't lie. Or at least these numbers didn't. The customer acquisition cost had skyrocketed. Our profit margins were thinner than I thought. Some of the investments I had approved, the new chairs, the elaborate office perks, were indeed draining capital faster than anticipated, and the crypto investment. I checked the market value. Sarah was right. It had plummeted. Almost a total loss. I had been so busy, so focused on launching the big product. I hadn't been monitoring these things as closely as I should have. I had trusted my team. And maybe, just maybe, my trust had been misplaced, or my oversight had been insufficient. But the family intervention. That was still a step too far. They had called my sister Clara. Clara and I were close. She was my confidant, my rock. If she truly believed I was losing it, it would devastate me. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling slightly, and called her. "Alex, I was just about to call you," she said, her voice soft and laced with worry. Mark called me. He sounded really concerned. He said you were having some issues, spending too much, making erratic decisions. He said you seemed stressed, maybe even depressed. Is everything okay? My heart sank. So they hadn't just contacted my family. They had fed them a story painting me as unstable, as a reckless spendthrift. They had poisoned the well. Clara, no, everything's not okay, I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. But it's not what they told you. They staged an intervention for me about my spending. They think I am ruining the company. Well, you did buy that ridiculously expensive sports car last month, she said gently. And that watch you showed me last week was pretty flashy. My stomach clenched again. The sports car was a personal indulgence, a celebration of 10 years of grinding. The watch. Clara, I bought that watch with my own money, not the company's. Oh, she said, sounding confused. Mark specifically mentioned it was on the company card. He said he had seen the statement. A cold, hard realization hit me. This wasn't just about my perceived overspending. Someone was actively manipulating information. Someone was planting false evidence. The watch charge on my company card, the inflated reports given to Mark, the misleading information fed to my family. This wasn't an intervention. This was a hostile takeover, meticulously planned, aimed at discrediting me, undermining my authority, and eventually taking control of Apex Innovations. The glimmer of doubt I had about my own judgment vanished, replaced by a chilling certainty. My employees weren't worried about me. They were pawns. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone was trying to seize my company. And the spending problem was just a convenient lie to make me look bad. True heartbreak was not their concern for me, but the calculated betrayal that lay beneath it. I had to find out who was behind this. And I had to do it fast. The clarity hit me like a splash of ice water. This wasn't about me losing my mind or being a bad CEO. This was a deliberate, malicious attack. The watch charge on my card that wasn't mine. The skewed financials presented by Mark. The whispers spread to my family and other employees. Someone wanted me out. My immediate suspect was my CFO, David. He was in charge of the financials. If anyone could manipulate the numbers, it was him. And he had been suspiciously unavailable. I tried calling him again, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I called his assistant. David's still on vacation, Mr. Thorne, she said, but he's extended it. He said he needed more time off. He'll be back in 2 weeks. Extended vacation. During a supposed financial crisis. That raised a massive red flag. I opened my laptop again and dug deeper into the company's financial systems. I bypassed the summary dashboards and went directly to the raw data, the general ledger, the transaction logs. I cross-referenced everything. My personal reimbursements for the company card were all there, clearly low. The only mysterious charge was the watch, and it was dated when I was out of state and had given my card to Sarah. Speaking of Sarah, she seemed genuinely concerned during the intervention. But she was the one who had my card. And she was also the head of marketing, responsible for the skyrocketing customer acquisition costs. I didn't want to believe it was her, but the thought was there. I spent the rest of the day poring over every financial document, every email exchange related to finances, every budget proposal. My eyes started to burn, my head to ache. The numbers Mark had shown, the alarming projections, they were indeed different from the ones I had been seeing in my regular reports. But they weren't necessarily fabricated. They were interpreted different. My internal financial reports, the ones David always presented, were always optimistic. They focused on gross revenue, market share, and future potential. They downplayed the rising operational costs and the diminishing profit margins. David was an eternal optimist. always painting the brightest picture. Maybe he wasn't malicious, just overly enthusiastic. Or maybe he was hiding something but not directly stealing. As I dug deeper, I noticed a consistent pattern. Certain expense categories had seen massive, unexplained increases. Consulting fees, software subscriptions, vendor payments, all legitimate categories. But the amounts were hugely inflated, almost double what they should have been in some cases. And these increases seemed to accelerate in the last 6 months. The same period Mark had pointed to. But where was the money going? It wasn't directly into my accounts. It wasn't for obvious luxury items. It was being laundered through legitimate-sounding company expenses. This was sophisticated. This wasn't just spending problems. This was systematic theft. Then I found a series of large payments to a shell corporation called Future Horizons Consulting. Payments were for strategic market analysis and long-term growth planning. The amounts were staggering, and the payments had all been approved by Mark, my COO. Mark, my right-hand man. The one who led the intervention. The one who had shown me the audited reports. The one who looked so sincere and worried. Could it be him? I pulled up the registration details for Future Horizons Consult. It was registered to a post office box in a different state. The listed owner's name was obscure, but a quick search revealed a subtle connection. The owner was a distant relative of Mark's wife. A very distant relative. Too distant to be a coincidence. Too close to be random. A wave of nausea hit me, Mark. The man I trusted more than anyone in the company. He had been with me since almost the beginning. He knew every secret, every weakness, every strength of Apex Innovations. He was the one who organized the intervention. The entire spectacle was a smokescreen, a massive distraction, while he siphoned money out of the company through this phantom consulting firm. The spending problem was a brilliant misdirection, painting me as the culprit while he was the real thief. The audited reports Mark presented, they weren't from a truly independent firm. They were likely cooked up by him, using a slightly more realistic set of numbers to make it seem believable. To make me doubt myself, and to justify the intervention. He would have needed help with that, probably from someone in finance. David, the CFO. Was he in on it too? Or was he just a clueless pawn, too optimistic to see the true figures, while Mark controlled the narrative? The watch charge on my company card. It wasn't Sarah. It was Mark. He had access to my card information through the company system, or perhaps he had even used it physically during the conference. Knowing I had given it to Sarah, he was meticulous enough to cover his tracks, using a seemingly personal expense to plant a seed of doubt directly linked to my spending problem. Probably put it there to make my own financial integrity look compromised. To further chip away at my defense, the betrayal was monumental. Not just the theft, but the emotional manipulation. The calculated cruelty of making me believe I was losing my mind, making me question my own sanity, making my family worry about me. He knew how much I cared about this company, about my people. He knew how much trust I placed in him, and he had used it all against me. My heart ached with a pain far deeper than anger. It was a profound sadness, a sense of personal violation. Mark, my friend, my colleague, had not just stolen money. He had stolen my peace of mind, my trust, and very nearly my company. The intervention wasn't about saving me. The discovery that Mark was the mastermind behind this elaborate scheme ripped through me, leaving me hollowed out and burning with a cold rage. My co-founder, my confidant, the man who knew my dreams and vulnerabilities, had systematically worked to dismantle me. It wasn't just the money, it was the sheer psychological warfare. I continued to dig, ignoring the hunger pangs and the growing darkness outside my office window. I found more evidence. It all pointed back to Mark. His plan was brilliant in its cruelty. First, establish me as a reckless spender. Then present fabricated or highly skewed audited financials to support this narrative. Third, gain sympathy and support from other employees by framing it as saving the company. Fourth, involve my family to isolate me further and solidify the image of an unstable CEO. Finally, when I was fully discredited and on the verge of breakdown, he would step in, offer to help, and slowly take over the reins, perhaps even orchestrate my removal from the board. My phone buzzed. "Alex, are you okay? We're all worried. Maybe you should take a few days off. Get some rest." The message was laced with genuine concern, or at least a very convincing imitation of. Was she truly worried? Or was she another pawn in Mark's game? Could she be helping him without knowing the full extent of his deception? I thought back to the meeting. Sarah had seemed genuinely upset, almost on the verge of tears. Her concerns about the customer acquisition cost were real. The watch on my card, she had expressed surprise when I denied it. Was she an unwitting accomplice? It was possible. Mark was charming, manipulative. He could easily convince people he was acting in the company's best interest. I also thought about David, the CFO. He was slow, often overly optimistic, but I had never thought him dishonest. If Mark was feeding him doctored numbers, David might simply be incompetent, not complicit. He might actually believe the company was doing well, simply accepting Mark's analysis without proper scrutiny. I needed help. I couldn't confront Mark alone. He was too smart, too well prepared, and I couldn't trust anyone inside the company blindly. Who was left? My gaze fell on an old photo on my desk. Me and Mark, 10 years ago, celebrating our first major contract. We were so young, so full of hope. He was like a brother to me. The memory twisted the knife in my gut. But amidst the despair, a flicker of an idea ignited. My sister Clara. She was smart, level-headed, and fiercely loyal. She wouldn't take kindly to being manipulated. And she knew someone, an old friend from law school who specialized in corporate fraud. He was exactly what I needed. I called Clara. "Clara, it's me. Listen carefully. I need your help. Mark, he's not what he seems. He's stealing from the company. He orchestrated the entire intervention to cover his tracks and push me out. He even manipulated you and Mum and Dad." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Alex, are you serious, Mark? But he seemed so concerned for you." "That's his genius, Clara," I said, my voice low and grim. "He's been siphoning millions through a shell company. He used the spending problem as a smokescreen. The watch charge on my card? It was him. He has access to my details. He wanted to make me look reckless." I quickly explained the evidence I had uncovered. The inflated invoices, the ghost consulting firm, the manipulated reports. Clara listened, her initial shock slowly turning into cold fury. "That monster," she whispered. "To do that to you, to worry Mom and Dad like that. I need your friend, the lawyer," I said. "I need someone who can help me gather irrefutable evidence, legally, and build a case, without tipping off Mark." "Consider it done," Clara said, her voice steely. "He's the best. I'll call him tonight. But Alex, be careful. If Mark is doing this, he's dangerous. Don't confront him. Not yet." I knew she was right. I needed to play this smart. Mark wouldn't expect me to uncover his deception so quickly. He probably thought I was still stewing in self-pity, or even considering their advice to take a break. I had to maintain that illusion. The next few days were a blur. I pretended to be distraught, withdrawn. I kept up appearances, showing up to work, but avoiding big meetings, letting Mark take more of the lead. He seemed pleased, almost smug. He would occasionally check in on me, offering support, reinforcing the narrative that he was worried about my well-being. It made my skin crawl. Clara's lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Evelyn, met with me discreetly. I handed over all the evidence I had gathered. She was impressed but cautioned me. "This is strong, Alex," she said, poring over the documents. "But getting enough to convict him and to recover the money will be challenging. He's covered his tracks well, and he's highly placed. This could get very messy for Apex Innovations." Messy was an understatement. Exposing Mark would cause a massive scandal. Employee morale would plummet. Our reputation would be shattered. Investors would flee. The company, my life's work, could still go down. Even if I exposed him, I might lose everything anyway. The heartbreak wasn't just about Mark's betrayal anymore. It was about the agonizing choice ahead. Do I risk destroying Apex Innovations to expose the man who tried to destroy me? Or do I let him get away with it, allowing a viper to remain in my company, slowly bleeding it dry? The weight of that decision was almost unbearable, but there was no real choice. I had to fight. For my company, for my integrity, for the truth. Tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Mook sat across from me in the conference room, looking confident, even slightly condescending. We were alone. I had arranged this meeting under the guise of discussing my return to full duty. Evelyn, the lawyer, had advised me against a direct confrontation without more evidence, but I couldn't wait. The emotional toll was too high, and I needed to gauge his reaction. "So, Alex," Mark began, a sympathetic smile on his face, "how are you feeling? Taking a few days to reflect helped, didn't it? We're all just so concerned about you." My stomach churned. He was laying it on thick. "Certainly gave me a lot to think about, Mark," I said, keeping my voice level, though my hands were clenched under the table. "About my spending, about the company's financials, and about trust." His smile wavered for a fraction of a second. "Of course, that's why we did this. For you, for the company." "Funny," I said, a bitter edge to my voice, "because what I found was something very different from what you presented." Mark's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I continued, leaning forward, "I found that the luxury watch charged to my company card, the one you so helpfully pointed out, was charged while I was out of state, at a conference, and while you had full access to the company's financial systems, and even temporary access to my physical card." His face remained impassive. "That's absurd, Alex. Why would I do such a thing? You are grasping at straws. It's clearly your card, your expense." "And the audited financials," I pressed on, ignoring his denial. "The ones that painted such a grim picture." I did my own digging, Mark. I found the shell company, Future Horizons Consulting. I found the massive, unexplained payments to it, all approved by you. And I found the link to your wife's distant relative. His composure finally cracked. A flicker of panic, quickly masked by anger, crossed his face. "This is ridiculous, Alex. You are delusional. You are clearly not well. This is exactly what we were worried about, paranoia. You are accusing me, your COO, of embezzlement?" "I'm not accusing Mark," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I am stating facts, and I'm telling you I have evidence. Enough to open a formal investigation. Enough to bring down both you and this company." He scoffed, but there was a tremor in his voice. "You don't have anything." You are stressed. You are making things up. Look at yourself, Alex. You are unraveling. This company needs stable leadership, not wild accusations. The intervention was a smokescreen, wasn't it, Mark? I said, my voice now cold and hard. A brilliant, cruel manipulation to discredit me and take over. You poisoned my team against me. You even called my family. All to cover your tracks while you bled the company dry. His face dark. You are wrong, Alex. You are completely wrong. And if you pursue this, you'll destroy everything you've built. The company won't survive a public scandal of this magnitude. Your reputation will be ruined. Everything will crumble.
So it's an admission then?
I challenged. Or a threat. He leaned back, regaining some of his arrogant composure. It's a reality check, Alex. Do you really want to tear down your own empire based on some paranoid delusions? Think of the employees. Think of the investors. Think of your legacy. You walk away quietly, seek treatment for your spending problem, and I'll ensure a smooth transition. The company survives. Your legacy, albeit tarnished, remains. You fight this and here is nothing left for anyone. He was trying to intimidate me, to make me choose between my company's survival and justice, the ultimate betrayal. My heart was broken, not just by his actions, but by the devastating reality of his threat. He was right. Public scandal, a lengthy legal battle would destroy Apex Innovation. The very company I had poured my life into, the one he was stealing from, would be the victim of my pursuit of justice. You really think I'll let you get away with this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You think I'll just stand by while you steal what I built, after what you put me through? It's a hard choice, Alex, he said, a mock sympathetic look on his face. But sometimes, a leader has to make hard choices for the greater good, for the good of Apex Innovations. I stared at him, the man who had been my friend, my partner. The man who had twisted my care for the company into a weapon against me. The intervention, the whispers, the calls to my family, it was all designed to corner me into this impossible choice. He wanted me to be too broken, too defeated, to fight back. I left the meeting, my head spinning. I had confronted him, and he hadn't fully broken. He was still defiant, still trying to manipulate me. And his threat, while vile, was brutally accurate. Exposing him would be a nuclear option. It would blow up everything. My company, my reputation, the livelihoods of hundreds of employees who had just been pawns in his game. My heart was a shattered mess. I had been betrayed, publicly humiliated, and now I was forced to choose between personal vengeance and the survival of my life's work. The weight of it was crushing me. The days following my confrontation with Mark were a living nightmare. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. The ultimatum he presented haunted me. Every employee I passed in the hallways seemed to look at me with either pity or suspicion. The whispers, which I now knew were fueled by Mark's calculated misinformation, were louder than ever. He's lost it. The company's in trouble because of him. He's paranoid. I tried to talk to Sarah, to David the developer, to anyone who had been in that intervention. I tried to explain, to hint at the truth, but their trust in me was shattered. Mark had done his work too well. They saw my accusations against him as further proof of my unraveling, as paranoia. Alex, please, Sarah said, her voice filled with weariness. You need to calm down. Mark is trying to help. We all are. You are imagining things. Sarah, I have proof. I pleaded, but I couldn't reveal too much without exposing my hand, without pulling the trigger on the nuclear option. The numbers he showed you, the audited reports, they're part of his deception. She just shook her head, her eyes sad. Alex, we've seen the real numbers. The company is struggling. You can't just ignore it and blame someone else. It was hopeless. Folk had built an impenetrable wall of misinformation around. They were convinced I was the problem, and he was the savior. The irony was a cruel twist of the night. Meanwhile, Mark, sensing my hesitation, began to act more boldly. He took over more meetings, made more decisions without consulting me. He started initiating cost-cutting measures, which conveniently involved cutting budgets that I managed or favored, further undermining my authority. He even started subtly pushing for a board meeting to discuss leadership transition. He was tightening the noose. My lawyer, Evelyn, advised me to wait, to gather more evidence, to prepare for a lawsuit that would inevitably expose everything. But waiting meant letting Mark consolidate his power, letting him bleed the company dry. And the legal process would take months, maybe years. AX Innovations wouldn't survive that long in a state of internal war. The financial situation, whether due to Mark's theft or the external market forces he blamed on me, was indeed deteriorating. Our cash reserves were plummeting. Investors started pulling out. Key employees, sensing instability, began to resign. David, the CFO, finally returned from his extended vacation, looking haggard. He came to my office, his face pale. "Alex, we have a major problem," he said, slumping into a chair. "Our main supplier for the new product line just canceled their contract. We owe them a huge penalty, and we have no alternative supplier lined up. Sales are plummeting without inventory. We're running on fumes." My heart stopped. This was it, the breaking point. Without that supplier, our flagship product was dead in the water. We had no backup, and the penalty would wipe out our remaining cash. "Why was there no contingency plan, David?" I demanded, my voice raw. "Why did this happen?" He wrung his hand. Mark assured me it was all under control. He handled the supplier relationship personally. He said he had a long-term strategy for them. I trusted him. My blood ran cold. Mark. He had deliberately sabotaged the supplier relationship. He wanted the company to fail, or at least appear to be failing, so he could swoop in as the hero, or buy it up for pennies on the dollar. He was destroying it from the inside out. The news spread like wildfire. The company was on the verge of collapse. Panic ensued. More employees left. Press caught wind of the rumors, painting Apex Innovations as a sinking ship, a victim of its eccentric CEO's reckless spending. My name was dragged through the mud. I stood by my office window, looking out at the city skyline, my reflection a pale, haunted stranger. Apex Innovations, the company I had built with blood, sweat, and tears, was crumbling. The vision I had, the trust I had placed in my people, it was all shattered. The dream was dying, and I was powerless to stop it without destroying it even further. The heartbreak was absolute. Not just the loss of the company, but the loss of belief. Belief in my own judgment. Belief in loyalty. Belief in the idea that hard work and integrity always prevail. They had tried to help me, but they had also been manipulated, and now we were all paying the price. Mark's plan was succeeding. He was ruining Apex Innovations and pinning it all on me. And I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal and the crushing weight of impending failure. My empire was collapsing, and I was its heartbroken king, watching helplessly from the sidelines. Despair was a heavy cloak, suffocating me. But even in the deepest pits of my grief, a spark of defiance flickered. I wouldn't let him win. Not completely. Mock had taken my company to the brink, but he hadn't taken my will. "We need a Hail Mary," I told Evelyn, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Something dramatic. Something irrefutable that exposes him to everyone before the company is completely gone. Evelyn, usually stoic, looked grim. It's risky, Alex. If it fails, you'll be finished. But I think I have an idea. It relies on one crucial element. Someone inside Mark's inner circle, someone who might have had a change of heart, or who he trusted too much. Her words sparked a memory. David, the CFO. He was out of his depth, overwhelmed by Mark's manipulations. But he wasn't malicious, he was just weak, and maybe, just maybe, remorseful. He had looked genuinely devastated when he told me about the supplier. He had trusted Mark, and Mark had betrayed him too. I reached out to David, not as his CEO, but as a desperate colleague. I asked him to meet me outside the office, away from Mark's watchful eyes. He showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes bloodshot. David, I began, skipping the pleasantries. You know something's wrong. You know Mark isn't acting in the company's best interest. He hung you out to dry with that supplier contract. He's been bleeding the company dry through Future Horizons Consulting. I have the evidence. I need your help to expose him, or everything we've built, everything you've worked for, will be gone. He looked at me, fear and exhaustion etched on his face. I don't know, Alex. He's so powerful. He'll destroy me. He's already destroying you, David, I countered. He's making you complicit in his schemes when this all comes out. If you are not on the right side, you'll go down with him. You have a chance to do the right thing, to save the company, and to save your own integrity. I showed him the documents Evelyn had helped me compile. The direct evidence of payments from Apex Innovations to Future Horizons Consulting, the bank transfers, the shell company registration, the link to Mark's relative. I explained how the audited reports were manipulated. David's eyes widened as he saw the irrefutable proof. The color drained from his face. He's been lying to me, David whispered, a tremor in his voice. Told me he was restructuring the supplier deal for better terms. He told me the consulting firm was a top-tier advisory group he found. I believed him. He manipulated us all, David, I said, a glimmer of hope in my chest. But we can still fight back. We need you to confirm these transactions. We need your testimony and access to the full, unedited financial records. We need to expose him publicly, dramatically, before he completes his takeover. David was torn. The fear was evident, but so was a dawning realization of the depth of Mark's betrayal, and perhaps a flicker of loyalty to the company he had served for years. Finally, with a shaky breath, he nodded. Okay, Alex, I'll help. What do we do? Evelyn had devised a plan. We would call an emergency, all-hands meeting, ostensibly to address the rumors of the company's collapse. Mark would be there, ready to take control to announce his stabilization plan. But instead, I would present the truth. With David's help, we prepared an alternative presentation, meticulously outlining Mark's fraud, his shell companies, his manipulation of the financials, and the direct link between his actions and the company's current crisis. The day of the meeting arrived. The main auditorium was packed. Employees looked anxious, some defiant, many just defeated. Mark stood at the podium, a smug look on his face, ready to deliver his carefully crafted speech about my erratic leadership and his vision for the future. I stepped up to the microphone before he could start. Thank you all for coming, I said, my voice resonating with a new kind of strength. I know there are many rumors, much uncertainty. Today we clear the air. Today you will learn the truth about Apex Innovations. Mark tried to interrupt. Alex, this isn't the agenda. We need to discuss the restructuring. No, Mark. I cut him off, my eyes locking with his. Today we discuss the truth about why this company is failing, and the truth about your betrayal. I turned to the audience. Many of you participated in an intervention for me. You believed I had a spending problem. You were shown audited financials that painted a dire picture. You were led to believe I was reckless, even unstable. All of that was a lie. A carefully constructed lie to cover up a far more sinister truth. I clicked a remote. The screen behind me lit up, not with Mark's polished presentation, but with the raw, damning evidence I had gathered. Payments to Future Horizons Consulting. Mark's name on the approval. The link to his family. The detailed flow of money. And then, David stepped forward, his voice trembling but firm, providing live confirmation of the manipulated figures, of Mark's direct orders, of the sabotaged supplier deal. The room erupted. Whispers turned to gasps, then to shouts. Mark's face went from disbelief to fury, then to a stark, terrifying realization. He tried to deny it, to shout over me, but the evidence was overwhelming. People who had been convinced of my guilt now saw the brutal truth. Sarah looked at Mark with horror. David, the developer, looked utterly betrayed. Security, alerted by Evelyn, swiftly moved in and escorted a raging Mark out of the building. The auditorium descended into chaos, but it was a chaos born of shock, not defeat. The truth was out. The real villain was exposed. The battle was far from over. Mark would fight. The company was still teetering on the brink, but the first, most crucial step was taken. The trust, once shattered, now had a tiny, fragile chance to be rebuilt. The heartbreak was still immense, but for the first in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. We would fight together. The aftermath of Mark's exposure was a whirlwind of chaos and catharsis. The news broke like a dam, flooding the local and then national media. Apex Innovations became a cautionary tale, a symbol of corporate betrayal. The internal damage was immense. Employees were shell-shocked, angry, some relieved, others just heartbroken by the deception. Legal battles began immediately. Mark denied everything, but the evidence, bolstered by David's testimony and additional financial forensics, was overwhelming. Evelyn worked tirelessly, building an ironclad case. The initial weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers, investigators, and a very skeptical board. The company was on life support. Our cash reserves were truly depleted, thanks to Mark's theft and the supplier sabotage. We had lost key talent, and our reputation was in tatters. Many, including some investors, advised me to declare bankruptcy, cut our losses, and start over. But I couldn't. This was my legacy. I called another all-hands meeting. This time, the room was quieter, filled with a raw vulnerability. "I know you feel betrayed," I said, my voice raw with emotion. "I know you feel foolish for believing the lies. I know some of you are angry at me for not seeing it sooner. And for that, I apologize. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I was blind. And we are all paying the price. I didn't make excuses. I owned my mistakes, my blindness, my misplaced trust. But this is not the end of Apex Innovations. This company was built on innovation, on trust, on hard work, not on the actions of one corrupt individual. We will fight for this company. We will rebuild. It will be harder than anything we've ever faced." I outlined a drastic recovery plan. Deep cost cutting, but transparently and fairly. No bonuses for the foreseeable future, but a commitment to job security for as many as possible. A complete overhaul of our financial oversight. And most importantly, an open-door policy, a renewed commitment to direct communication, where no concern would ever be dismissed again. Some employees left, unable or unwilling to face the uphill battle, but many stayed. Sarah, my head of marketing, came to me, her eyes filled with tears. "We all make mistakes, Sarah," I said, a weary smile touching my lips. "The important thing is what we do next." David, the CFO, offered his resignation. I was so naive, Alex. I let him manipulate me. I can't be trusted with the company's finances.
No, David,
I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. You made a mistake, but you stood up when it mattered. You are learning. We'll implement new checks and balances, and you'll have my full support. We need you. It was a slow, painful climb. We cut expenses to the bone. We renegotiated contracts. I personally flew to meet with angry investors and clients, rebuilding trust, one conversation at a time. The media circus was relentless, but we faced it head-on, focusing on transparency and our commitment to recovery. The spending problem became a running joke, a dark humor within the company. Careful with that stapler, Alex. It might start another intervention, someone would quip. I even kept the gold-plated stapler on my desk, a permanent reminder of the day everything changed. Over the next year, the company stabilized. We didn't just survive. We started to slowly, painstakingly, grow again. The internal culture shifted. There was a new sense of unity, a shared purpose forged in the fires of adversity. Employees felt empowered, knowing that their voices truly mattered, that transparency was paramount. I was no longer the distant CEO. I was one of them, scarred but determined. Mark was eventually found guilty, sentenced to prison, and ordered to pay restitution. It was a victory, but a hollow one. The money was largely gone, and the emotional scars ran deep. My relationship with my family healed. Clara was my fiercest advocate, helping me navigate the legal labyrinth and supporting me through the darkest days. My parents understood, seeing the toll it had taken on me. Life was different now. I was more cautious, more cynical about human nature, but also more appreciative of genuine loyalty and honesty. The spending problem intervention, while a devastating betrayal, had forced me to confront deeper issues within the company and within myself. I had been too trusting, too distant, too focused on expansion without proper oversight. I learned to listen more, to delegate differently, to connect with my employees on a deeper level. Avex innovations, forged in the fires of crisis, emerged stronger, leaner, and wiser. Painful lessons of betrayal and the near loss of everything had transformed me, and the company was a new beginning, built not just on innovation, but on a foundation of hard-won truth and a renewed fragile trust. The heartbreak remained, a permanent scar, but it was a scar that marked survival, not defeat.